I suppose just to keep the interest in running there by continuously challenging myself. So, the first Guinness World Record you're talking about is, as you said, running 7 marathons on 7 continents within 7 days. So, the 6 days, 9 hours to be exact. So,
Mhm.
how I Guinness record for that is I'm the first blind person to do the 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. So our first was Antarctica, Chile, Miami, Madrid, Marrakesh, Dubai, and Sydney.
In this episode of the RVA Running Man podcast, I speak with Sinead Kane. Sinead is a visually impaired athlete who lives in Youghal, Ireland. She holds the Guinness World Record for being the first visually impaired person to complete 7 marathons on 7 continents in less than 7 days. Sinead also holds the Guinness World Record for running the furthest distance by a female on the treadmill in 12 hours. In our conversation, we discussed what sparked her interest to start running at the age of 30 and some of the obstacles she faces as a visually impaired athlete. We also discuss her journey in accomplishing her 2 world records and her experience running the Volcano Marathon. Thank you for doing the interview. Just so that I'm clear, you're 95%, you've been 95% blind since the day you were born. Is that correct?
Yeah, since birth, yeah.
And how did you develop your interest in running?
Well, all throughout my life, charity work has been a big part of my family, and so even when I was younger, I would have done a lot of charity work with different organisations connected to visual impairment, such as National Council for the Blind of Ireland, Irish Guide Dogs, and so at age 30 in 2012, I was asked to do a 10K for Child Vision, the National Education Centre for Blind and Visually Impaired Children. And I didn't really know what a 10K was because when you're blind and visually impaired, it's very hard to judge distance. So I just said yes, not really knowing fully what was ahead of me because previous to that, I'd never been involved in sport. I didn't do running as a child. In school, I was never picked for teams, and anytime I was picked, like I was always picked last, and any teams who did pick me didn't want me on their team. So a lot of the time I would have ended up sitting on the P bench. And so like running to me wasn't part of my childhood. And so at age 30, I was asked to do this 10K for Child Vision. I said yes. I set myself 2 goals. One to raise over €2,000 for them, and the other to do this 10K in an hour. I was told at the time that that would be a respectable time. So I suppose for me, I'm the type of person that I like to set goals for myself. And so they're the 2 goals I set, and I did 8 weeks training. I found it very difficult to get a guide runner, and I suppose I wasn't expecting that. Kind of, it was just me saying yes automatically, and then it was only afterwards thinking to myself, okay, actually, how am I going to do this? Like, and then the process of trying to find a guide wasn't really that easy.
Mm.
But I ended up finding a guide, did the 10K. So I did the first, and it built my confidence an awful lot. I did the 10K in 55 minutes and I raised well in excess of €2,000 for Child Vision. So I accomplished both goals and I was very happy.
So you went headfirst into just running, and again, listening to you about the process of finding a guide. It sounds like that was one obstacle. What other obstacles did you face with your first time running, this being your first time running that 10K?
Well, kind of, I suppose the whole thing of not having a watch and then seeing the person who was running with me, her looking at her watch, and then when I asked her, can I see your watch? I couldn't see the figures on it, and even getting us to stop running and maybe her holding her hand right up very close to my face, even at that, I couldn't see the figures on the watch. So it just kind of taught me, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to see my watch here. I just need to kind of listen to what the woman is saying, what the guide runner is saying. So I suppose that is a barrier in itself if
Mm.
you're a type of person who lives and breathes by what it says on your watch, then
Hmm.
I suppose that can be a bit frustrating. And then another thing then was, I suppose, just the guide runner that I was running with, depending on the area where we were in, she'd say, "Oh, do you see that beautiful dog across the street?" Or "Do you see this or do you see that?" And I suppose she was just naturally talking as if she talked to somebody else, and that's
Right.
fine. But I suppose again, it would signal to me then that I wouldn't be able to see that. And I suppose as well, on our first training run, I think we did, maybe was it a 3 kilometer, 4 kilometer training run, and I
Hmm.
thought the end of it, I actually thought that that was the whole thing. And then she was like, "Oh no, no, you've about like another 6 kilometers to go to complete the whole thing on the day of the race." So I suppose just and I suppose it was just a bit kind of difficult to build the trust with her as well.
Right.
At the very beginning, it was very kind of slow pace, and just really trying to build a friendship and trust between me and her.
All right. And that sounds like a big part of, again, the guide runner works as your vision. What's the process that you go through in finding a guide runner? Because obviously this person is your, vision during your race. And like you said, that it does take time for you to develop that bond and trust. What process do you go through in finding a guide to run a race with you?
Well, I think, say, for me, I kind of looked to people around me to see did I know of anybody who would want to do it. And then failing that, then contact different sports or sport running clubs. And then failing that, then it, like some shops would be associated to running. And
Hmm.
so, like, if you mention, if you want to pair runners, somebody would, rather than say go to a sports shop, they'd say, "Oh, go to this particular running shop." So then maybe you might mention it to the people in that running shop. That's actually how it came about, how I got that guide runner for the 10K, because I was trying to get a guide runner through asking around different running clubs, and nobody was coming forward. And I don't know, I was just very disappointed at that time
Yeah.
because there's so many runners out there. And I kind of felt it kind of made me think that, okay, is all runners selfish people? Because here's me doing something for charity, and
Mm.
then they don't even want to help me when there's so many clubs there. But you just have to keep persisting, and then if there is any organizations regarding visual impairment, maybe contact them, put it out on social media. So I've used different techniques as the years have gone by.
Okay. And again, I've watched some of your videos on your YouTube channel, and I see some of the um, processes or methods. I saw where one of your guys and you were tethered together. What other methods are used to help guide you along a race?
I think the biggest is like communication and using the most efficient amount of words, rather than saying, like, if you're going at a pace where, say, a tempo run, or a pace where I really have to concentrate, or you're actually in the race and you're trying to just go all out, then um like, you don't need somebody to be saying to you, there is going to be a speed ramp in about 20 meters, but don't worry, when we get to it I'll tell you. So like,
Mm.
that's about nearly 2 sentences or one very long sentence. Like, I don't want that in a race. In a race, I just want speed ramp in 10, and then
Okay.
I know that that's like 3 words. So then I know that very close, this speed ramp is going to be very close. So my guide runner, then he would put out his arm, and so I would lean on his forearm as we're going over the speed ramp. And then once we come off it, then he'd say clear, and then I'd know, okay, leave go of his forearm again.
You have double Guinness World Records. Where did the idea come from to pursue both of these records, both of these goals that you clearly did two amazing things? Looks like you ran 7 marathons in 7 days on all the different continents, which
Mm.
again, not I don't think many runners have ever accomplished anything like that. What made you want to strive to do these goals?
And I think I'm the type of person who's always trying to grow and get better and be that 1% better tomorrow than what I am today.
Hmm.
So that goes for me professionally as well as through running. So it's that wanting to grow where that kind of comes from. And I suppose just to keep the interest in running there by continuously challenging myself. So the first Guinness World Record you're talking about is, as you said, running 7 marathons on 7 continents within 7 days. So the 6 days, 9 hours to be exact. So
Hmm.
how I Guinness record for that is I'm the first blind person to do the 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. So our first was Antarctica, Chile, Miami, Madrid, Marrakesh, Dubai, and Sydney. And so, yeah, and that was through Global Running Adventures, the race
Hmm.
director being Richard Donovan. And yeah, and I suppose how previous to that, I had ran the Volcano Marathon in November 2015, and that race, the no Volcano Marathon, is also was also run by Richard Donovan, and that really challenged me mentally and physically. And during the that race, I kept saying to myself, "Okay, after this, I don't want to ever do running again. It's just way too hard." And that was all going through my mind. But the
Yeah.
minute I got to the finish line, I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, what could I have done that's harder than that? Because that was really, really hard. Like, because I was out on my feet for, I think it was 8 hours or 8 hours, 15 minutes. And in that race, I actually came last. Now, my time in that race, had I done it the previous year, I would have come fourth. So I
Mm.
suppose it all depends on what competition you're up against. But even though I came last, I knew that I gave it everything out there. And I knew that my visual impairment did hinder me in a lot of sections that I had to be extremely cautious, and my safety does always have to come first, no matter how competitive I want to be. Um, and I could even see that when we were going up the side of a volcano, they on the flat or on the trail, I would be overtaking competitors. But then when it came to the kind of climbing part and going up, because I was so cautious, people then would overtake me again. But as I say, at the end of that race, I just wanted to kind of do something better or
Mm.
do something more challenging. And that's why I said to my guide runner, what could I do that's more challenging than that? And he said, have you ever heard of the World Marathon Challenge? And then so we decided in so that was the November 2015 of the Volcano Marathon. And then in the January 2016, we decided that we were going to go and do this World Marathon Challenge.
The first World Marathon Challenge was ran in 2015. The official website describes the event as an amazing logistical and physical challenge to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days, or 168 hours from the start of the first marathon to the finish of the final marathon. The current registration fee for the race is 39,900 euros, which translates to 43,600 US dollars. This price includes the cost for the races, international charter flights, and support for the event. In addition to being the first visually impaired person to complete this event, Sinead was also the first Irish female to compete in the World Marathon Challenge.
We spent the full year from January 2016 until January 2017 trying to get sponsorship, trying to get partnership with companies to come on board to, I suppose, put money in and help me get to go and pay the race entry fee. And two sponsors came on board in the April 2016.
Mm.
And then June 2016, Brexit happened, and the sponsors then dropped me because they said the markets are unstable. We don't know what we're going to do with our funds. So then all that summer, I kept training as if I did have the sponsorship to go, because it's better to be prepared for the opportunity. And so that's why I kept saying to myself, okay, I want to try and make this happen. And those days were difficult to go out and do a training run in the hope of getting to go when it wasn't confirmed. And I suppose when you're up, say, on a Sunday morning and it lashing raining out and it's 7 a.m. and you're going doing a 4-hour training run, it is quite difficult to do that. But I kept persevering and I did it. And then we got sponsorship last minute in the December 2016 and got to go. So that's my first Guinness World Record. And then the second one that you stated was have the furthest distance for any female on a treadmill in 12 hours. And so my distance is 130.50. And that was done in February 2018. And I suppose that came about because my guide runner said to me that he thought that I could achieve it. And I suppose at the beginning I didn't really think I could achieve it. But he was saying, oh, you spend so much time on the treadmill anyway. And he just put the belief into me. And then the two of us tried to organise it. And there's an awful lot of admin that has to go with it. When you're trying to make an application for a Guinness World Record. A lot more than I thought that there would. And I suppose that goes for prior to it, during it, and after it. So it's and I suppose even during it and after it, all I had to concentrate was nearly the easy bit on running, whereas my run coach, guide runner John, he had to manage all the admin work and getting all the witness statements together, getting all the photographs together, all the video footage together, and because there's an awful lot of documentation that Guinness World Records require.
12 hours in the process of running on that treadmill. And I know that's a hard feat for some people to do 2 hours on the treadmill, 1 hour on the treadmill. Just the same as you were doing or you felt during the 7 marathons. Did you question yourself at any point while you were running on the treadmill of whether or not this is something that you could accomplish?
Yeah, I think there does be moments during any race where you're going to question yourself. For me, the biggest amount of questioning came before the treadmill attempt. So like, say I did the treadmill attempt, I think it was on a Monday, and it was on the previous Thursday where I suppose I just got so overwhelmed by the anxiety of doing it that I just said to my run coach, no, I'm not doing this. And so again, he just had to kind of calm me down and talk it out. And he said, well, if you don't want to do it, then that's fine. But like, you'll always be wondering what if. And I suppose I thought to myself then, I just took time for myself and thought over it. And then I said to myself, okay, yes, I do want to attempt this. It's better to try and fail than always be wondering. So I did it. And then when it actually came to stepping onto the treadmill, that was a very daunting part for me. Even like those first 30 minutes or even the first 10 minutes, when you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm on this now for 12 hours. And even that was overwhelming. But what was even more overwhelming was saying to myself, I have to stick at a particular pace. I don't think it would have been as bad if I had said to myself, okay, I'm just on this now for 12 hours. It doesn't matter whether I walk, run, jog. All I have to do is just stay on this for 12 hours. So I don't think that would have been as bad. But when you know that you're chasing something and that you have to stick to a particular pace. And then that anxiety of knowing that you're being watched. So like if that at no point that could any hand touch the rails.
Mm-hmm.
So if I went to fall and if I touched the handrail, then that would be a disqualification.
Wow.
And so I suppose there was anxiety about that because obviously if you do go to fall, you just instinctively go to catch something. So there was a bit of anxiety there about that. And then there was anxiety there of, okay, again, if I turn to look around and if I get distracted at all, and then if I come off the treadmill, like if you come off the treadmill and the belt is still moving, again, that's a disqualification
Wow.
because your feet has to be on it at all times. So I suppose it was that anxiety, and I I just tried to not overthink it. I just said to myself, okay, you've done this before. All you have to do is do your running,
Hmm.
and that's all you have to do. And I suppose I just had to calm myself down that like that because I kind of, if you kept thinking, okay, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Then you're just too anxious, and then you're not going to be able to run properly.
Right. Now, what did family and friends feel about both of these goals? What were their opinions, and what did they say to you when you told them that you're going to run 7 marathons in 7 days and seven different continents, and you're going to run and do the treadmill 12-hour Guinness record? What was their response?
I think you will always have people who will support you and they'll say, oh, we want the best for you. If this is what you want, then go ahead, do it. And then you'll have people who are very worried. They'll be saying, okay, well, should you really do this? How's this going to impact on your health? Um, and then kind of my response then is, it's fine, it's fine. This is why records are there. Um, I think overall, people just wanted to encourage me and support me the best way they could.
Okay. Now, it sounds like you've done other activities outside of these Guinness record race events. In the other race events that you've done, have you run into things that you feel that could have been done better for a person that's visually impaired, both from organizer standpoint and runners that are participating? Are there things that you feel like could be done better as a runner that is visually impaired?
So, yeah. So, in terms, I've advocated a lot for people with disabilities, vision impairment, and races. Um, I suppose I've encountered different problems along the way. So in 2015, the reason why I got to go to the Volcano Marathon was because in June 2015, I wanted to enter a race, which was a women's only event. So 40,000 women would normally go into it. So it's the women's 10K. And when I tried to enter it, the organizers told me, oh, you can't enter this. Your guide runner is male. It has to be a female. And I
Mm.
said to them, okay, well, thanks very much, but my guide runner is male and I'm not choosing a different guide runner because I've built up a lot of trust with him. And I suppose through a lot of negotiation back and forth, I ended up putting out a tweet at the time saying, how come in year 2015 I can't have a male guide runner? And then here in Ireland, there was a lot of talk on different radio shows about my tweet. And anyway, I ended up getting the policy changed with the race organisers. So I suppose that's one way I got the um, advocated, and that's why that race in November 2015 came about because
Mm.
the race director of that race said, well, if they don't want you in their race, you can come and be in my race. No problem. I don't mind whether your guide runner is male or female. So I suppose that's one way I've advocated, and the policy change doesn't just affect me. The wording of it is important. It doesn't just say male guide runners, it says male guide assistants.
Mm.
So or so it leaves out the word male. It says guide assistants, so that can be female or male. And a girl with cystic fibrosis, after that happened, emailed me and said thanks for getting the policy changed, because she had a small bit of hassle of getting into the race previous to that, but now the policy was changed that it was good. So that's one way I've advocated. Another way I've advocated is a race director at one point wanted to charge my guide runner as well as charge me. Wow. And I was trying to explain, well, like, look, any other races I've entered, they don't charge the guide runner, any local races or anything like that. And this guy was just adamant that he wanted to charge the guide runner. So I never ended up in the end doing that race. But again, I publicly highlighted about him. And there was another race in Spain, a 24-hour race that I wanted to enter. And I was told by the organizer of that race that I couldn't enter the race because myself and my guide runner would be taking up too much space and that we'd mess up the race. And yet, if you looked at my distances and compare them to previous winners of the previous year, then I would have been within the top 5 females out of the race. So yeah, so there was that, and I challenged that, and that was on the television and radio in Barcelona. I never ended up going to that race either, but I got policy changed in Barcelona.
It shouldn't be surprising to anyone that Sinead's a qualified lawyer with 2 PhDs. During this interview, it was evident to me that she fights for what she believes in. Coming up, we talk about the fight she had to go through to join the 2019 Irish Women's IAU 24-Hour World Championship team.
The biggest fight that I've encountered to date would have been in October 2019, when I had got eligibility standard to get onto the Irish Women's 24-Hour team. So in Ireland, for a woman to be eligible for selection, she has to get 200 kilometers or above. 200 is the minimum. It's the international C standard, and you have to get that, and then be an IAU labeled race. And I got that in April 2019. I got 204.6 kilometers in a 24-hour race in Crawley in the UK. I came second female and 4th overall. All the competitors in this 24-hour track race were all fully sighted. I was the only competitor there that had a disability. And that was April 2019. The July 2019, the Athletics Ireland stated that they weren't going to select me, even though I had the standard, and even though there was very few girls in Ireland who had the standard, but they weren't going to select me because the IAU said that I couldn't be selected because I was breaching an IAAF rule, which states no athlete is allowed outside assistance, and my guide runner was being deemed as outside assistance. And so between the July 2019 and the October 2019, I tried to negotiate with the IAU, International Association of Ultra Running, and I just wasn't really getting anywhere. And so I had to take a legal case against them, and the World Championships were going ahead on a Saturday at the end of October 2019, and I didn't find out until the Wednesday that I was Wednesday at 4:59 that I could compete, that I'd be allowed into this World Championships. The Irish team were flying out on the Thursday morning, and so it was just very last minute me getting to go. When I did get to go, then I just felt very excluded, and it just wasn't the experience that I was expecting it to be, because of how it all led up to it. And I suppose when I got that 204.6 kilometers, I just I wanted it to be all about, say, my ability, and when my name would be in the list, you wouldn't make a distinction, oh, that girl is visually impaired or
Mm.
that girl has a disability, because there'd be no asterisks beside my name or anything like that, because like all other girls, I would have achieved the standard required. But then this became a big conversation in the media all about my disability. So
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
became something that I didn't want it to become. But again, that court, to take that legal case as well, cost a
Wow.
lot of money, and not everybody is going to have those resources. And so that's why I shouldn't have been put in that position. And yeah, I just shouldn't have had to undergo that stress.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it happened. And I suppose some people in those situations, they would say, okay, I'll give up. But I wasn't going to give up, because I'd worked too hard and I had invested too much of my time and energy into getting the standard to give up.
We got only a few more minutes, but I have two important questions for you. From the day that you were a child and you weren't picked in PE, to a lot of these things that you've gone through, these obstacles that you've gone through with your racing experience, you haven't taken no for an answer. What put the fire in your belly to not take no for an answer? What's given you that motivation to fight back for the things that you've been dealing with as a visually impaired runner?
I think it's to do with social justice and my legal background and my advocacy, because I have a legal background, and it's just human rights,
Right.
and it's because I value inclusion and I value equality. And when something triggers one of your values, then you're going to stand up for it.
Right. And what advice would you have for a new runner, a runner that's visually impaired, that's just taking up the sport of, or the recreational sport of running?
Well, when I began off, it was all very new to me, and um, like, just have fun with it at the beginning, and yeah, just have fun, and ask people around you, would they like to bring you for a run, and realize that some days will be frustrating for you, that you might need to learn, you might not be going the pace that you want to go, but just be very open minded to it, just take it all in at the very beginning, and that running teaches you a lot about patience, and even my blindness teaches me a lot about patience. So to be patient for yourself, to have fun at the beginning, and then maybe go and do a park run on a Saturday. And as you build up, then get into a 5K race or 10K race. It's a great way to um, have movement. Like, movement is very important for physical health and for mental health, and just overall feeling good.
A special thank you to Sinead Kane for being a part of this episode. If you'd like to learn more about Sinead Kane's journey as a runner and advocate of the visually impaired, please visit her website at sineadkane.ie. That's spelled SINEADKANE.ie. If you like what you heard on this episode and like to hear more content from my show, please visit www.rvarunningman.com or download past shows on any of the major podcast platforms. Until next week, please be safe on the roads and trails. Talk to you later. Peace.